There is no doubt in my mind, however Governor Walz did in terms of sincerity, that Vance won this debate.
Does Governor Walz have a problem with the truth? No.
They were talking at one point, Vance wanted to correct something about how Haitians got into this country. And he was right, and the moderators wouldn't let him correct it. It's very interesting.
But at the beginning, the two issues driving the campaign right now are Harris has a big deficit on the economy, Harris has a big deficit on immigration, and Republicans were happy tonight and Democrats a little bit nervous that on those two issues, Vance carried it.
J.D. Vance is much more experienced at this, at public speaking, at defending himself, at pivoting.
Tim Walz ended up being completely crushed in the vice presidential debate. And it was so bad, of course, the leftist mainstream media had to admit that J.D. Vance owned him. Now, of course, will this be consequential to the actual election? Probably not. Most people don't vote based on the VP pick. But honestly, it couldn't hurt. Now, the good news is J.D. Vance came out and gave a masterclass on how to take apart your opponent. But also, he defended Donald Trump's record very effectively. And before we get to these clips, please like and comment on the video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
You've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
So this, of course, was the fact check heard around the world, all right? This was the second time that the moderators intervened with their supposed facts to combat the mistruths that J.D. Vance was speaking. So J.D. Vance takes it upon himself to say, hey, since you're fact checking me, which is against the rules of the debate, I'm going to jump in here and give you a little bit of knowledge. There's an app that illegal immigrants can use to apply for protected status. And then with the wave of a magic wand, Kamala Harris can grant it to them. And guess what? She's doing that in droves, which is what's been happening to receive this mass amount of 20,000 Haitians in a small town. And of course, all of the resources are completely overrun and crime is up. And people don't like it. But of course, if you point that out, that's the worst thing in the world. Okay. So I love how the moderators come back and say, thank you for explaining the legal process that's being totally abused by the Kamala Harris administration. All right, that's all they can say. However, from this point forward, guess what happened? No more fact checks because they were called out on it right away by J.D. Vance.
Diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
The failings of the Biden-Harris administration are on full display for everyone to see here. I mean, after all, Who unlocked billions of dollars for Iran to go ahead and do their nefarious purposes around the world? It was the Biden-Harris administration, right? Who is getting us into more conflicts? Who has created instability around the world? It is the Biden-Harris administration. And remember, Donald Trump, right, basically had world peace for 4 years under his presidency because he led through strength, which often involved a little bit of intimidation on his part, okay? And J.D. Vance bringing that up is wonderful to remind people that, yeah, the world doesn't have to be this crazy place we're living in where death and destruction rains down constantly, right? It can be a place of peace. It can be a place that's actually pretty good to live in, especially when you incorporate Donald Trump's economic policies.
If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again.
Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. Honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you've simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens.
So Tim Walz makes a pathetic attempt to say that, oh, the experts agree that Donald Trump would be bad for America. And all J.D. Vance has to do is say, hey, look at the record. Look at what was happening before Donald Trump came into office. Look at everything he's done with bringing back manufacturing, bringing back jobs, all right? And the unprecedented growth we were able to have. And as far as experts go, I would also pile on that there's a bunch of experts out there that said the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. There's a bunch of experts out there that said the COVID vaccines actually stop you from getting COVID. There's a bunch of experts out there that said the masks actually worked, okay? There's a bunch of experts out there that said go ahead and social distance because that's going to stop the spread of viruses, which all makes no sense. So the idea is that we just blindly trust our experts over common sense is completely ridiculous. And I love how J.D. Vance calls back to wisdom.
We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill. to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot, I will get caught up in the rhetoric, but being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID, and I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor.
Now, this was the most surprising moment of the night for me, right? You actually have the leftist moderators calling out Tim Walz on one of his many lies. In this case, one that was brand new to me, that he was actually in Hong Kong during the whole Tiananmen Square protest, okay? So rather than just saying, you know what, I misspoke, I was wrong, etc., he comes out and gives this long-winded explanation about his community knows who he is, and he has this program of traveling back and forth to China and learning an awful lot, but he never really answers the question. He says, I'm a knucklehead, I misspeak, I get caught up in the moment, and it's so bad that the moderator has to ask the question again. And then he has to clarify, well, I was there later. Best moment of the night, all right? Self-owned, complete takedown, and it was wonderful, okay? Now, that's how the debate ultimately shook out, all right? Tim Walz was exposed as being a bumbling moron, and J.D. Vance completely owned him. Although, to be honest, as time went on in this debate, Tim Walz actually did better and better. He got more comfortable. It was just a horrible first 45 minutes for him. And remember, most people only watch like the first half hour of these debates anyway, so he's going to come off as being extra bad. And like I mentioned, will this affect the race? Probably not, but we'll have to wait and see what some polling says. Now, one of the best moments post-debate from all of this was, in my opinion, Donald Trump Jr. coming out and completely working CNN. Let's check this out.
Thanks, Jake. I'm here in the spin room with Donald Trump Jr. You urged your dad to pick J.D. Vance as his running mate famously a few months ago. How do you think he did tonight?
I thought it was a masterclass. It was just an incredible performance, just real command of the facts. Didn't let sort of the fake fact check, try to steamroll him. He came back with actual facts. I think he literally won every issue across the board. I think he was actually very comfortable on so many of the issues that Republicans tend to fail. He was probably more comfortable in those issues than most Republicans are, even on our strong points. So I think it was an incredible debate.
Do you think he was more comfortable in those issues than your dad was in the last debate?
Well, I don't think, it wasn't necessarily a 3-on-1 debate. It started that way. I think J.D. Vance shut that down, and there were rules, and we said they should be enforced. Those rules were not enforced with my father. I think what happened in his debate was absolutely disgusting, and I think the American people witnessed that. I think they saw the bias that's out there in the media. I think they see that we are literally up against $1 trillion of mainstream media. You're up against $1 trillion of big tech functioning as the marketing department for the other side. But the reality is, Caitlin, the world is watching what's going on right now. They see it when they go to the grocery stores on a daily basis. They watch Iran, not through proxies, but directly attacking Israel right now. We could be on the brink of World War III. You notice how those things didn't happen under Donald Trump. You may not like everything that he says, you may not always like his demeanor, but the dictators of the world understood strength. They understood the resolve that we saw after he got shot in the face coming back to fight. And they didn't trifle with that. We've been leading with incompetence and weakness for 4 years. The world has watched, and they've capitalized on that. Our enemies, Iran, wants Kamala Harris to be president. They've said that. They've leaked documents to her, stolen from our campaign, that they hacked. Russia has said they want Kamala Harris to be president because a weak America is good for Russia. A weak America is good for Iran, and a weak America is great for China, all of whom are chomping at the bit for a Harris-Walz administration.
Jake, back to you.
Well, that was a lot.
So maybe I like what Donald Trump Jr. said because it's basically what I've been saying this entire video, okay? When you have a weak Biden-Harris administration, it causes the bad actors around the world to, of course, become emboldened and do bad things. Surprise! So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.